Lesson 1.4, Standard Form of Linear Equations. So now standard form requires that we meet certain criteria for it to be called standard form. And that criteria is that we have the x variable and the y variable on the same side of an equation, and a must be positive. So this one right here has to be a positive number. And also, a and b are not both 0, so they have to be actually numbers. And a, b, and c are integers with the greatest common factor of 1. Meaning I couldn't have a 2 here, a 4 here, and a 6 here. All are divisible by 2. In which case we would do that and simplify the problem out. So all those letters A, B, and C would have to be numbers that cannot be divided by anything besides 1. So the requirements again for standard form is that we have x and y on the same side of the equation. A, the coefficient of x, is positive, and A, B, and C are not divisible by anything else besides 1. That is standard form. X-intercept and y-intercepts are things you use to graph equations that are in standard form. Now remember, we can graph something pretty quickly when it is in y equals mx plus b form, which is called slope-intercept. And we would just use the y-intercept for one point, use the slope to help us get another point, and we would connect the dots. So we know that we need 2 points to graph a line. So when something is in standard form, we have two choices. Solver for y, so we can graph it like this, or we can use x and y-intercepts. And actually, x and y-intercepts are not that hard to find. The key is to understand that if you're talking about an x-intercept, then you're looking for what happens when you plug a 0 in for y. Because when y is 0, you're on the x-axis. And on the other side of that, the y-intercept is when x equals 0. Because when x is 0, you are on the y-axis. So to go along with that, the graph of a linear equation has at most one x-intercept and one y-intercept, unless it is the equation y equals 0, which is a horizontal line, and it's on the x-axis, in which case every point is an x-intercept, and we'll see that later. So finding the intercepts of linear equations. So here's your rules. To find the x-intercept, plug a 0 in for y. So again, here is the rule. To find the x-intercept, plug a 0 in for y. And to find the y-intercept, plug a 0 in for x, and we'll see what that looks like. And like I said before, to graph a standard form equation, you could also put it in slope-intercept form, which means just solve for y. Now for the following two examples, we need to find the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and then write it in slope-intercept form. Okay, so first of all, like we said, to find the x-intercept, we need y to be 0. So if y is 0, then we have x plus 3, plug a 0 in for y, equals 6. 3 times 0 is 0, and you get x equals 6. This is the x-intercept. To find the y-intercept, x is equal to 0. So we plug a 0 in for x, plus 3y equals 6. 0 is 0, so we have 3y equals 6. Divide both sides by 3 to undo the multiplication, and our y-intercept is 2. Now, writing that in slope-intercept form, we said to write it in slope-intercept form, we would get y by itself. So I would start by subtracting x from both sides, and it's mx plus b form, so I'm going to write the x first. Then we divide both sides by 3, and our answer will be y equals, and in this case we're going to write the individual divisions. So we would do this part, which is negative 1 over 3x. Then we would have to do this part, which is a plus 2. And this is your line in slope-intercept form. The next one, same rules. X-intercept means y is equal to 0. So we have 2x minus 3 times 0 equals 15. 3 times 0 is 0, so we're going to end up with 2x equals 15. Divide both sides by 2, and x equals 15 halves. Or you can write 7.5. Both are good. Okay, next one is our y-intercept, which means x equals 0. So 2 times 0 minus 3y equals 15. 2 times 0 is 0, so we're left with negative 3y equals 15. Divide both sides by negative 3, and y equals negative 5. And that is your y-intercept. And to finish, we'll solve for y. So we have 2x minus 3y equals 15. Subtract 2x because we want to get y by itself. And you have negative 3y equals, and it's mx plus b form, so we'll write the x term first. And divide both sides by negative 3. We're left with y equals this fraction, which is negative 2 divided by negative 3, so positive 2/3 x, and then this fraction, which is 15 divided by negative 3, in other words, negative 5. And that is the end of lesson 1.4, part 1.